like I have the power in my hands, which, is just huge. And I think that I was handing my recovery over to doctors. So, and my experience is through the training is that I was the one that fixed me. And I really hope that this message gets out there and, people call Ian and change their life, because the suffering doesn't have to continue.
Excellent. Well, we are speaking to Marnie today. Marnie, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Ian. I love having a chat with you as always.
Cool. So I've asked you to come along to have a chat because I think your story is so invaluable. So you had the long COVID experience, years of fatigue. So look, that's a pretty good place to start, I think. Tell me that part of the story.
Yeah, so at the time I had a 2-year-old and a 3-month-old baby, and I got COVID at a very common time when everyone got COVID, and it was my first time having COVID, and I had a very normal experience of COVID, and then I didn't get very sick. It was just very like the flu, so it wasn't a bad version of it. And then I recovered, and then maybe a few weeks later, I noticed the symptoms coming back where I was very tired. I had a sore throat, my glands went up, and I thought, oh, that's strange. And this continued on, and then I went to the doctor, and they said, I think you've got long COVID, and then my fatigue definitely started to really impact my life. At one point I was so sick, just remembering now, I couldn't pick up my daughter because I was so fatigued. My mum had to pass me her to breastfeed her. So I was very sick, and everyone was very worried. I think my mum was, looking down the barrel of caring for me. Because, my husband has to work. So, yeah, it was a really scary time for me and everyone around me.
Yeah. It's like there's still that question mark on long COVID, which is just, is it real? It's so clearly real. And the impact on people's lives, young mums, huge, partners, families. I have this saying that, chronic illness never impacts just one person. It's huge. Yeah,
definitely.
So difficult period with life with long COVID, and there's big discussions around at the moment on what is it. And the interesting thing is I have been working with post-corona fatigue for coming on 20 years. It's actually nothing unusual. It's certainly a novel coronavirus, but what I'm finding is that the impact is very similar to other post-viral fatigue conditions as well, and certainly the results that people are getting when they work with me are very similar, whether it's long COVID or post-viral fatigue or ME chronic fatigue syndrome.
Yeah. And that was my learning along the way, is that I just very much identify with the chronic fatigue symptoms, with post-exertion malaise. All of those things were seemed to be identical to what I was getting with long COVID. It was just the start of mine was the COVID virus.
Yeah. Yep. So there's certainly lots of horror stories coming out around long COVID, and it is horrible. There's also a lot of doom and gloom. And so I think why I really wanted to talk to you was you just have such a wonderful story on the power of hearing success stories. And I'm hoping that this interview is that for other people as well. But can you tell me about your journey with hearing success stories? Because I love it.
Yeah, so the start of my story is it's a great story. So I was out in the middle of the bay in Melbourne in the middle of winter, desperate to get well. So I was no one else in the bay because it was freezing, and I was totally submerged except with my hands out because I hated my hands getting that cold, because this is something that is meant to help with chronic fatigue symptoms. And so I was standing out there, and then another girl came out my age, blonde girl, and she was standing in the water like this. And I said, hey, I said, why are you doing this? And she said, I had a chronic illness. And I said, I've got a chronic illness. And she said, I had chronic fatigue. And I said, I've got chronic fatigue. And she said, I've totally recovered. And I just said, how? Tell me how. And that was the first time I'd actually heard someone ever say that. Yeah. And we went inside to the steam room and we just chatted and chatted, and she told me about her story. And then at the end I said, what's your name? And she said, my name's Marnie. And I said, my name's Marnie. And yeah, there was lots of similarities, but I messaged her that afternoon. I said, thanks so much. It feels like you're my future self speaking back to me. And I suppose what I heard was someone the same age as me, just, coincidentally the same name, but someone that I really believed that had been as sick as me, that had recovered. And I thought, well, if she recovered, why am I any different? And so she just handed me your number, and I called, and, it wasn't a smooth sailing, I believe. I had my mum, who's a nurse, just absolutely so skeptical, telling me that it's a scam. What sort of medical background does he have? And, I'm sitting in my dressing gown at my mum's house with my two little kids, barely being able to look after them. And I was just like, who cares? I want to recover. I don't want to live like this. And this girl recovered. Why wouldn't I give it a go? And I suppose the thing that she was saying to me was the money. And I just thought, I'm paying these like doctors, maybe $300 a visit, chronic fatigue doctors, plus all the medication I'm on. And that's costing me way more than this once off cost that I just felt like, I couldn't see why I wouldn't try it. Especially with the hope of someone else's story.
Yeah. It's so invaluable to hear someone like me getting results. So important. And I know for a fact that there are many people that are well today because of your success story, because you went on a podcast and told your story, which got out there as well. And so I'm now having people contact me and going, I heard a podcast, this lady in Melbourne, and it
makes me so happy. Yeah, because I don't do any sort of social media, but for something like this, I was asked to do the podcast, and then, you asked me to do this, and I thought, if I can help one person that is struggling, that maybe identifies with me as a mum, and I just think it's worth it.
Yeah, just as recovery doesn't just impact one person, illness doesn't impact just one person, recovery, like the families that it impacts, the partners, the children, and I think down the generations as well. It is a massive thing. So the power of success stories.
And I just want to say, my mum, you should hear her now. She cannot try and help more people because she just has seen my recovery. She's such a firm believer in neuroplasticity, and she's always getting people, trying to tell people my story. So she's been her mind was changed.
Yeah. Well, from an outsider, it sometimes sounds like the lightning process is very woo-woo, and it gets put with some really out there, recovery approaches, but it is based on the science of neuroplasticity, how the mind and the body work together, and the speed of recovery sometimes probably goes against the lightning process because it seems too good to be true, but it is really just stripping it down to what are the essentials, because there's a lot of things that people do that are good for general health, and you'll feel yourself get a little bit better, but it's not actually getting to what is at the heart of it. Yes. So recovery can happen quickly, but it is work. So that the lightning process really looks at three key pieces. One is preparation for recovery. It's so important. People get so caught up in, what am I going to do? Like, try this. But actually there's a step before that. And that's, am I really ready to make the changes required? So there's that. And then there's the steps of recovery. But then there's also the work after as well. So I thought it might be useful just to hear about tell me about your lightning process experience, and then we'll move on to life after the lightning process.
So I did mine online because was it because it was during COVID? I'm not sure now thinking back, but I knew you had offered the online option due to COVID. And the girl that I'd met, the other Marnie, she had done hers online and totally recovered. So I was like, I can do it online. You were in Brisbane. And so I went into it. I think the first day I was very, very excited. I was very enthusiastic, and I had a huge lead up where it took me months to actually be able to do the course due to having to have two children looked after. And also, the breastfeeding component of my baby being so small, all of that sort of stuff. It just took a while for me to actually get to do it. And then the first day I had the most enthusiastic sort of approach. I thought, I'm recovering today. This is it, And I had the first day, had so many learnings, and then I went to bed that night and I woke up the next morning, I think sicker than I had been, with like a migraine, fatigue, just so unwell. And I went to the next day just like, oh my gosh, is this working for me? And the third day, I felt the impact of the putting in place the learnings that I had, and the process. So that was my experience. It wasn't smooth. It was bumpy, for those few days. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really useful to hear that the journey, it's not a miraculous click your fingers and you're well. It's working at it. And then when you do have those speed wobbles, you're approaching that with an understanding. Oh, okay, it's okay. I understand what this is. So that's the knowledge component. You've got the skills of the lightning process, but the knowledge, it's like, okay, I understand this. It's less scary. It still sucks, but you approach it with an understanding that, okay, I know what's happening.
I think for me, even doing the actual course, once I actually heard the content, I was like, this is science. This is evidence-based stuff, which really works for me. I've studied science at university. It was so logical that there was just no way I could deny the factual evidence, So that felt really good as well. It wasn't, woo-woo stuff, like you said.
Well, what some people might not know is that the training takes place over 3 days, but it then comes with lots of follow-up. So I'm in email contact and phone and Zoom calls with people regularly just to tweak and see how they're going. But there's one particular thing that I have hanging up on my wall, which is an interesting way to follow up on people's successes. So, Marnie, tell me about what this is.
So that's our Run Melbourne 10-kilometre medal. Yes. So I'd never run before. And you invited me and all the lightning process graduates to participate in the run. Didn't have to be 10Ks, but I took that on as a challenge, and I trained with the other Marnie and completed the 10K run, which was huge for me. I actually never even thought I could run 5Ks. So I remember like when I was younger trying that couch to 5Ks and all of that sort of stuff, and just never been thinking I could do it. And I suppose this is the beauty of the lightning process, is that I implemented the lightning process, techniques in order to, learn to run and to train well and to, to get to that 10Ks. So, that was a great achievement. And just, in the reflection of the day, just, reflecting on how sick I'd been and just being able to run that 10Ks with joy, just chatting the whole way around, just like a normal person.
Yeah, it was such an emotional day for me as well. So, I have a wall full of photos and letters and postcards from people that have gone through the training and success stories. But I was there on that day. I was literally sharing the success stories on the finish line with you guys. So it was so emotional. And, I knew everyone's backstory. I knew that everyone had been through hell, their own version of hell, and that, they'd spectacularly turned it around and then knuckled down and done the training to do this 5 and 10K run through Melbourne. So, it was really emotional.
And just some of those other people, meeting some of the other people that we ran with in their miraculous stories, those stories, those other success stories are what keeps me going and what gives me hope when I have any sort of speed wobbles. If I ever have a speed wobble, I look at Marnie, the other Marnie, and she's running like 28Ks now. And I just think, well, I know how sick she was. Look at what she's doing. That's right. I can do that too.
One of the things that's really interesting in the last couple of years is the number of brain training programs that are out there, and they differ. They really differ on what they're trying to do, their understanding of what fatigue is. And so some allow you to, or ask you to put aside some time during the day, like half an hour, an hour. The learning process is very different. It is getting you to retrain the brain, the nervous system in real time from when you wake up in the morning to when you go to bed at night. And that's part of the efficiency of the lightning process, tapping into neuroplasticity and the brain and nervous system's ability to change, but doing it very deliberately with the knowledge and understanding of what's going on. So can you talk about your experience, the work that you put into recovery?
So my experience was absolutely implementing every single thing I could from the course, everything that I possibly could at every moment in order to make sure I did what you said to do in order to recover. So when I got home, my husband said straight away, he said, "You are like a different person." So it was evident, when I say it wasn't straight away, there was elements of it that were straight away, but it did take me implementing it over and over again with the intensity of the work was a lot. So for me, like I was so motivated to change what was going on. So the fatigue symptoms that I was waking up breastfeeding in the night. I was doing the exercises then. I was, I was doing it at every opportunity. And I remember once in the training you saying, will you do it if you're sitting on the couch? Will you get up off the couch to do it? And I thought it was a great little awareness for me because that's when I did feel fatigue. And it was also really putting that, how motivated are you in my head? And the thing is it has been work, but it also was very instant. I got home from the training and my partner saw an instant, change in me. He just said, you're like a new person. And so the experience for me was that it was very instant. I was getting, experiences that I was doing things that I hadn't done in years. And instantly, even that first training night, I went for a big walk, pushing my daughter around in the pram, which I hadn't been able to do. So it was instant, but it took a motivation, like you said, in real time at times when maybe I could have slacked off to actually get up and do what was required. And I suppose then after time, there's been times when I totally, it's been months and months and months, and I totally even forget that I've ever had any issues. And if there's ever any speed wobbles, I just put the work in again. So
Yeah.
like I have the power in my hands, which, is just huge.
Yeah, I often use the phrase getting back in the driver's seat, because
Yes.
part of the problem, part of the stress of the problem is this unpredictability and what's going on, and you try something, you wake up with a flare up. You think you're doing everything right, and suddenly, what the hell is going on? So that unpredictability, or that's a piece of the puzzle as well. So yeah, back in the driver's seat with skills is critical.
And I think that I was handing my recovery over to doctors. So I would, when I felt that I was really sick, I was like, I need to get an appointment. I need to get an appointment, because they're the ones that are going to fix me. And my experience is through the training is that I was the one that fixed me.
Yeah. And it's very clear the approaches that are least likely to succeed in the long term are the ones where you're handing over your power to a drug or a device or a therapist to do the work that only you can do. Yeah, it's a critical piece. So it certainly takes work, and you certainly did that work. One of the pieces that we cover before the training even starts is, what is your motivation to do the work? So do you remember what got you to work at it so well?
So I suppose my primary motivation would have been my family at the start, the impact it was having on my husband, on our relationship, on my ability to be a mother.
Yeah.
So just the basics of being a mother really is being able to play with my 2-year-old and feed my baby. And then my other more selfish motivation was that I really wanted to be able to exercise again. I got so much joy out of exercise in the past, and that was taken from me. And so that was definitely one of my big motivations.
Yes. And I wrote down your motivations on your application form for this interview, and I will feed them back to you just as a pat on the back, if nothing else, but also maybe to others listening, just the importance of a very personal, emotive reason to do the work. So you wrote down, run with my children, tick. Exercise, exercise, exercise. I think we can do a big tick on that one. Go for long walks was another one. Go out drinking with my friends was another one. And just to be able to go out for lunch and dinner, like, so normal, but so important.
Yeah. And just on that, I'm going for a hike straight after this with my girlfriend. Just a 13-kilometer hike on a Wednesday.
Now, just listen to that. Just a 13-kilometer hike. There was a time when that would have just been Mount Everest.
And I'm going to do that hike and then come home, pick up my daughter from daycare and have, a busy evening with my kids. And there's just no hesitation to my ability to be able to do that. And that's the important thing, is that keeping that message going that we do recover, and that's why I'm here doing this. So I just hope that, there's other people out there that are struggling that can hear that there is a solution and a life beyond it.
Well, Marnie, you have got your 13K hike on a Wednesday afternoon to duck off to. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate sharing your story as well. I know it'll inspire lots of people going through long COVID, and especially young mums who are struggling to be there for their families, just to know that recovery is absolutely possible and it doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out affair. So enjoy your hike, and well done, Marnie.
And Ian, I just want to say thank you for the work you do. You say, it makes me emotional because you do the work that you do. It just changes lives. And I really hope that this message gets out there, and, people call Ian and change their life, because the suffering doesn't have to continue.